This week, I got some follow-up news on the PS5 redesign, plus I'm going to talk about the exciting conclusion of Epic versus Apple. So let's go ahead, together, as a people, and check it out! And welcome to another sensational Sunday. I'm Mike, and this week, let's go ahead and start with the PS5 redesign. So if you caught last week's news video, first I talked about the PS5 redesign briefly, and then I hopped over to the news about the whole debacle with Horizon Forbidden West and that whole pricing mess. Anyway, the reason I want to revisit the PS5 redesign is because Keith commented last week about the temperature difference with the new PS5, which I didn't cover in the news video. And there was actually a specific reason that I didn't, because I did record a part to talk about it, but I actually took it out of the video because I just wanted to focus on why I thought they might be redesigning it, not what was going on with the testing thing with Austin Evans. And the main reason is because I didn't want to feel like I was joining in on people kind of attacking him, which they were at the time. So I didn't want to contribute to that. So I was just like, I'm not even going to mention anything about his testing versus the opinions going around on the internet. Even the article that I referenced from Ars Technica, I kind of felt like they were attacking him a little bit. Like they had some valid points about his testing methodology, because basically he just put a thermal camera up to the new PS5, and the conclusion that he drew, since it was hotter, was that it was less efficient, which he's been criticized with that being not the best way to test it. And me being myself, if I can't test it to verify, then I'm not gonna get in the middle of it. Ars Technica didn't even test it at the time. They were just kind of theorizing and talking about why his testing methodology was flawed. But yeah, I purposely made that decision because I didn't want to throw any more fuel on the fire. Even though I know like a lot of people don't watch my videos, I just didn't want to be a part of it. So that's why I left it out. The only reason I mentioned it this week is because they tested it over at Igor's lab, and they actually tested the CPU temps. So they did find that the new PS5 with the redesigned cooler, the CPU/GPU, or the SoC, system on a chip, it's actually 10 degrees cooler with the new cooling solution. Now they did find that the VRAM was 8 degrees hotter and the VRMs were 2 degrees hotter. So that's just one person testing it. You know, the first person outside of Austin really at least has made a video about it. That still, you know, really isn't definitive. Now, even with the findings, you probably still can't say that Austin's video is completely wrong, because if the system itself is still hotter, it's still gonna be worse for the other components other than the CPU. So it's one of those things where the temperatures are so close, it really doesn't matter which PS5 you get, honestly. I don't think it's gonna make a huge difference. I theorized that maybe they made it more efficient to deal with the extra heat from introducing the external SSDs, because I know that was a concern of them. But Sony hasn't come out with a definitive answer. Last week was just kind of me spitballing on why they might have redesigned it, but I was thinking that they probably redesigned it to try to make it more efficient. The other thing Igor's lab pointed out was that there's also a redesigned PCB as well, so it's not just the cooling solution that was redesigned. So I don't think that they would just do a complete redesign just to save money, because I know that's what was Austin's conclusion overall. I do think it might save them some money, but I do think that they're probably trying to make the system more efficient and a little bit lighter. So we'll have to see when there's more testing. There's still people trying to get their hands on it so they can test it. Like I know Gamers Nexus is always really thorough. Once they get the new PS5 in from Digital Foundry, they're going to do some testing there. But my conclusion is, as of right now, it probably doesn't really matter that much. Like either PS5, the launch, or the revision is probably fine, and it's probably not going to make that much of a difference. So with that being said, let's hop over to what I came to talk about today, and that was the conclusion of Epic versus Apple. This was a story, like when it first dropped, I was tracking it like back to back, and I was like, what's going on? And then at a certain point, I was like, well, they're about to go through litigation, so I ain't gonna sit here and cover the lawsuit every weekend. It's gonna be boring. So I kind of laid off on it, waiting for this conclusion, and we finally got a verdict. Now, the opinions are kind of going back and forth if Apple won or if Epic won. In my opinion, I think it was a win on both sides. So the main thing that's probably going to really change everything from this ruling is that they ruled that Apple was in violation of California's unfair competition law. And basically they need to allow App Store developers to communicate directly with their customers, to have links or buttons to alternative payment methods if they don't want to use Apple's payment method. So the whole thing with Apple's payment method is that each transaction, they get 30%. And the way that the App Store was set up before is you could put apps up there without using Apple's payment method, like as a free app, but you couldn't collect any money or even make references to the fact that they can even go to the site and pay you for the service. Like Netflix, they took Apple payment away because they were tired of paying the 30%. But if you went to the Netflix app on iPhone, you could just sign in. They didn't make any references to the fact that you had to go to the site to sign up because that was part of Apple's policies, which I do think is unfair. Like 30% is really a lot. I mean, if you're thinking about like Epic in this situation, yeah, they can afford the 30%. I really didn't feel bad for Epic in this situation. Like, it was never about them, but this is really a victory for developers. Because if you're a smaller developer, then that 30% is really a lot. Like, if you're making $10, let's say if you need $8 to even keep your business afloat and you're getting $2 profit, and then Apple comes in and takes 30%, which is $3, you're not even making enough to keep your business afloat, especially if it's like a smaller business. So that 30% can really be a lot depending on the situation. And I know that Apple last year, they did this thing where they were going to take less of a fee if you're a smaller business that made less than $1 million, which, you know, yeah, I guess technically it helps, but it's really not adequate. I don't think that there should be any reason why they shouldn't allow these apps to communicate with customers and be like, hey, if you want to sign up, go to our website. I know what Apple's argument probably is like, well, we don't know if they're going to send them to a malicious site where they make the payment. Well, whatever, just put a warning up there like, hey, they use third-party payment method and this hasn't been certified by Apple or something like that. It doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't matter. It's not really a valid excuse to treat developers that way. So I'm glad that they made this ruling. The other part where they ruled in Apple's favor is they deemed that they're not a monopoly in this space, which makes sense because, I mean, they have less of the market than Google does with Android. I mean, together, there would definitely be a duopoly because there's no other major app stores for mobile, and they both were charging the 30%. So I could see an argument if they were both being like charged together. But Apple, who doesn't even have the majority of the smartphone market as far as software or hardware, it's going to be hard to make the case that they're a monopoly in that space. So that ruling I also think is fair. And then the other ruling was that Epic has to pay Apple $3.65 million because technically they were in breach of contract. They did agree to pay them that 30% during that period, and they didn't. So they basically had to give 30% of their earnings during that period. Overall, it really seems like the courts did their best to come up with a fair ruling. I mean, this is really going to change the App Store drastically for Apple because they are going to lose money. I mean, I'm going to be honest about it, but I think it's the best thing for developers. Not that it matters too much because they just passed a law in South Korea basically saying that both Apple and Google have to do the same thing. They have to allow apps to use third-party payment methods and communicate with their customers directly if they don't go with either Apple or Google's payment methods. So it was going to change either way. I think Apple was prepping for this. I think they were trying to get people to change their mind by doing, you know, the discounted rate for people that make under $1 million. But this is something that needed to change. And Apple's going to lose money, but, you know, they're like $1 trillion company. So they'll be fine. I'm sure Apple will be fine. And I say that as an Apple fan. I have an iPhone. I'm in that ecosystem, but I do think it's a bit unfair, especially to the smaller businesses that these policies probably hurt. Now, the other part of the ruling is there's really nothing that says that they have to put Fortnite or allow Fortnite back on the App Store. So as of right now, Fortnite is still not on the iOS App Store. They also said the same thing in relation to the South Korea law, that they're not obligated to put Fortnite back on the App Store. They have to follow the same rules as everyone else. So at this point, I'm not sure if Apple will allow Fortnite back on the App Store or not. I was actually really happy with the ruling. I don't feel like Epic was innocent in the situation. Like, it's one of those things where, like, yeah, you had a good point, but then you went about it in a really bad way. You made a stupid commercial spoofing the 1984 Apple commercial with Fortnite characters. To me, it just came off as being really immature. But at the end of the day, I don't really care if Epic got what they wanted or not. What they did overall helped the industry, so that's good. But that's all I wanted to say about the Apple versus Epic trial. And of course, I will be back to talk about the new shiny iPhone. I don't know if I'm going to do a live stream on Tuesday night or do a video for Wednesday. I'm still deciding that, but of course, if you subscribe, you know, and hit that little notification, then you'll get notified whenever I decide goes up. But until then, if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, and subscribe, and always do at least 2 things at the same time.